probably need like a pearl necklace and maybe some pearl earrings or something. I don't have those, but I did have fun curling my hair for this. Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. So today I am filming another cook with me video in a vintage style. So I shared one of these a few weeks ago and I loved cooking these recipes and you guys loved watching them. And so I thought, why not do a full day of vintage meals? So I've got my best 50s housewife get up on, my best 50s housewife hair and makeup, and we are gonna make some meals out of this Better Homes and Gardens new cookbook. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm a full-time working mom and I have two kids who are 10 and 7. And on this channel, I like to share all kinds of working mom content, food and home content. So if you're new, I hope that you'll stick around. So let me show you the meal plans of what we're going to make today. So this Better Homes and Gardens new cookbook is from the 1950s, and I originally got this idea from Noelle at Noelle's Big Family Life. She has a great YouTube channel and I'll link her down below. But I had such a fun time making my first video on a Swiss steak meal that I decided to do, like I said, a full day of cooking. So in the front part of the cookbook here, there is a meal planning section. And so I have planned a breakfast, lunch, and dinner out of this section, and so let me show you what we are going to be having. So for breakfast, I am going with the ham omelet breakfast. So I'm going to be making a ham omelet, some corn muffins with grape butter, a banana and orange cup, and then to drink, coffee, milk, or hot chocolate. This is the lunch meal planning section, and out of this I will be making a cheese souffle, broccoli with lemon butter sauce, a chef salad bowl, and some cherry tarts, because who doesn't make cheese souffle on the regular for lunch? For dinner, I will be making a meal out of the Meals That Save You Money dinner planning portion. So we are going to be having some meatballs with spaghetti, steamed green beans, mixed greens with garlic dressing, and then for dessert, we'll be having the winter ambrosia salad. So let's get started. 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner out of this 1950s cookbook. I lied. So before I get started cooking, I'm going to show you my outfit because I am not going to stay in this outfit while I cook. I'm sorry. That would be fun to watch, but you know what? I just prefer to cook in a hoodie and leggings. So anyway, I will show you my outfit. So this is actually a skirt that I got from LuLaRoe several years ago, and I got it because I was Minnie Mouse several years for Halloween, and this is obviously a very apropos mini skirt, but I think it does nicely as the 50s housewife as well. And then I just have pantyhose on and some black heels. You probably can't see. This is a terrible angle. And then a black top and a black cardigan. So I probably need like a pearl necklace and maybe some pearl earrings or something. I don't have those, but I did have fun curling my hair for this. So anyway, this is just for fun, but I hope you guys enjoy this video and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to start for our breakfast is the corn muffins. And if you have this cookbook, it's on page 79. If you don't have this cookbook, I am going to type all of these recipes out into a Word document and link them in the description box below if you want to try them. But the first step is to cream 1/3 cup of shortening and 1/3 cup of sugar in a bowl. And I'm just using my hand mixer for this. The next step is to add 1 beaten egg and then whisk that in or mix that in. You'll also add some flour mixed with baking powder and salt. Also 1 1/4 cups of milk and some salt and 1 cup of cornmeal. So it's been a while actually since I have made homemade corn muffins. I usually actually get the Jiffy corn muffin mix and make them from that, which those are good as well. But this recipe does call for sifting the flour and the salt and the baking powder that's included in the recipe. So I'm just using a fine sieve to do that. You don't need any fancy type of sifting equipment. I actually used to have a sifter a long time ago, but I got rid of it because it was hard to wash, and a fine mesh sieve works just fine. And so after I mix the dry ingredients in and the cornmeal, just mix that until it is well combined. Make sure you don't over mix it, otherwise the muffins will be tough. So once your batter is mixed up, you can go ahead and scoop these into a greased muffin tin. If you do not have a nonstick muffin tin, you can go ahead and put paper liners in, but this Rachel Ray muffin tin that I have is very nonstick. As long as I spray it, it works great. I don't have to use paper liners or anything. So I'm just using an ice cream scoop to scoop my batter into the wells of the muffin tin. I will link both the scoop and the muffin tin in the description box below if you guys are interested in checking those out. I'm going to bake these at 425 degrees. The recipe calls for 25 minutes, but I actually started at around 15 minutes. I changed the time after you guys saw that, and they were cooked through. So I would actually start with 10 minutes and then go from there. Okay, so the next part of our breakfast is to make a ham omelet, and this is a pretty traditional recipe. I'm going to start out by using some ham that I got from the deli counter. This is just plain Black Forest ham, and I'm using my knife to chop that up into small pieces to use in my omelet. Next, I'm going to shred some cheddar cheese, maybe about 1 or 2 ounces. And then since I'm only making an omelet for myself this morning, I'm only going to use 2 eggs. And the recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of half and half per egg. So I'm adding 2 tablespoons of half and half to those eggs. I'm also going to add some salt and pepper and then whisk those up until they are combined. All right, so what I have here is a small nonstick skillet with about a tablespoon of butter in there that I've melted. I'm going to tilt the skillet around so that I get all of the bottom coated with the butter, and then I will pour in my egg mixture. So once that has had a chance to cook a little bit on the bottom, I'm going to add the chopped ham and let that cook a little bit more. I will use a rubber spatula to loosen the sides, and then I'm just going to scoop some of that uncooked egg over to the other side of the pan so that that gets a chance to cook. I probably could have tried to flip this whole omelet over and then put the cheese inside, but I wasn't feeling that gutsy today, so I just used my spatula to, again, scrape the raw egg over and make sure that it was all cooked. So once I basically had a circle of egg and ham on the bottom of the pan that was cooked through, then I went ahead and added my shredded cheese. So again, I just used some sharp cheddar cheese that I had shredded off a block. You could use Swiss cheese. That would be really great in this recipe too. This recipe is on page 224 of the cookbook if you have it, and there are also some other variations to this omelet if you wanted to try those as well. So once I had the cheese inside, I went ahead and folded it over, and then I'm going to slide that out onto the plate, and then I will go ahead and plate up my breakfast. So here is my 1950s vintage breakfast all complete. Okay, so here is a look at our 1950s breakfast. So following the meal plan, obviously we have our ham omelet here with some shredded cheese in it. I topped it with a little bit of fresh chives. And then we have our fruit cup over here with bananas and oranges. The corn muffin called for grape butter on the side. So I looked up some recipes for that, and essentially it's just like a grape jam. And so what I did was I mixed together a little bit of softened butter with grape jam and then just spread it on the corn muffin. So that is my breakfast, and then obviously hot coffee on the side. Okay, so as I was looking through the lunch meal plans in this cookbook, I decided to make a cheese souffle because it was one of the more challenging recipes and I hadn't made one before. And so first, what you need to do for a souffle is to separate your eggs. So you're going to put the whites in your mixing bowl and the yolks in another bowl. You are going to whip the whites in a later stage, but first you're going to make the cheese sauce. So in a pan here, I have some butter melting. I went ahead and added some flour along with some salt, and I'm just going to cook that until the flour loses its raw taste. You're not going to make a roux, you're not going to brown it or anything, but you just want to cook that for a minute or so. Next, I'm adding some milk to basically make a white sauce or a bechamel. So this is going to become our cheese sauce, which is going to be folded into the egg whites to make our souffle. The original recipe in this cookbook from 1953 called for 1/2 pound of sharp spreading cheese, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant. And so basically I improvised. I had some sharp Old English spreading cheese from Kraft in my refrigerator. And so I went ahead and added a little bit of that along with some shredded sharp cheddar cheese, and this worked out fine. I think that's one thing to note, especially with vintage recipes, is that sometimes you have to modify the ingredients because what they had in the cookbook, 50 or 60 years ago isn't quite comparable with what we have in the grocery stores now. So this recipe makes quite a thick white sauce, and that's fine because you're going to integrate this with the egg whites for your souffle. So what I did was just put a little bit of the hot cheese sauce into my egg yolks and mix that around to temper them. That will make it so that when you whisk your egg yolks into the cheese sauce that they don't scramble. So go ahead and whisk the rest of the egg yolks into the cheese sauce, and then you can start on your egg whites. So I'm using the egg whites here in the bowl of my KitchenAid mixer, and this is the most efficient for me. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can definitely use a hand mixer for this. You could also use a whisk, but I fear that it's going to take you a very long time to whisk these egg whites to a stiff consistency. All right, so once your egg whites are mixed to a stiff consistency, you can go ahead and start to fold in your cheese mixture. You want to do this probably 2 batches at a time. Don't do it all at once. I'm using a fork, like a large fork that I got like randomly from some kitchen store. I'm not sure where I got it, but you could also use a spatula. But just fold the cheese sauce super gently into the egg white mixture and then pour that into a souffle dish. I actually had to order a souffle dish from Amazon because I didn't have one, but I'll link the one I got down below. And then the only other instructions are to make sure that you do not grease the souffle dish because that helps it not or it helps it climb up the sides of the pan if you want it to rise, and then to run a ring around it with a spatula. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the oven at 325 for 60 minutes. And here's what it looks like when it got done. I did also sprinkle some cheese on the top, which I forgot to mention, but that turned out so good. I was super impressed that my souffle came out because I've never made one before, but it was surprisingly easy. Even though there were a lot of steps, it was not super complicated. Okay, so the next step for lunch is to get started on the chef's salad bowl to go on the side for the souffle. This is on page 340 and page 335 of the cookbook. This salad calls for French dressing. So in this dressing, it calls for 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of dry mustard, 1/2 teaspoon paprika, a dash of cayenne pepper, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and half a cup of salad oil. So in this case, I just use olive oil, but you could use canola oil or anything that you'd like. To make it easier, I just go ahead and put it all into a mason jar and then shake it up. And then I'll put that in the refrigerator to let the flavors blend while I chop my other salad ingredients. So if you guys aren't familiar with chopping up a head of iceberg lettuce, all you have to do is slam it down really hard on the counter and the core will come out. You can just pull that out and then you can chop it up and wash it in your salad spinner. So I always wash my greens with very cold water and lemon juice, and then I'm going to let that soak while I chop the rest of my veggies. So this particular recipe called for chopped green pepper, some radishes, tomatoes, and cucumber. So I stuck with the traditional recipe. So I'm just going to chop these veggies up and put them into a separate bowl. And then once I get my salad rinsed and drained, I will put that into the larger bowl and then top it with the veggie toppings. And then I can just leave it in the refrigerator until it is time for lunch. So I do frequently get questions on the type of chef's knife I have, and I will link that in the description box below. I also have a video on how I chop vegetables, which is helpful to some people who are not quite sure how to approach them. So I'll link that down below as well. So for my broccoli, I just put it into a small saucepan and steamed it for about 5 minutes. Drained it, and I'm adding some butter, lemon juice, salt, and pepper, and then I'm going to let that sit until it is time for lunch. So for the salad, I am spinning it dry in my OXO salad spinner. Once that is done, you can see all of the water that is left, so you definitely want to make sure that you either dry it with paper towels or spin it dry. The recipe called for 1 clove of garlic that was either cut or smashed, and to rub that into the sides of the bowl so that the salad would absorb some of that garlic flavor. I've seen this before in some Caesar salad recipes, but I've never tried it before, and it was actually really good. So I would definitely recommend that step if you haven't done that before. Next, I am putting my chopped iceberg lettuce into my salad bowl, and then I'm just going to top it with my toppings. So I'm going to put the tomato on, the cucumber, the radish, and the green pepper. And then I'm going to wait until I serve this to dress it. You don't want to dress your salad too quickly before you eat, otherwise the lettuce will get soggy. And definitely only dress the part that you're going to eat at that time. If you want to save any for leftovers, make sure that you take that out before you put the dressing on and put it into a separate container. So the last thing that this lunch menu plan calls for is some cherry cheese tarts, and I'll show you how I'm making the crust here. So I'm actually going to make it in my food processor. So I am adding some cream cheese to my food processor along with half a cup of shortening. It comes out to be 4 ounces of cream cheese, half a cup of shortening, and then you'll add 2 cups of flour along with half a teaspoon of salt. And I did have to add some water to get this dough to come together. So just keep that in mind. If you're making this or basically any type of pie crust or dough, you can't add ice water to let the dough come together. And if you don't have a food processor, you can definitely use a pastry cutter or even your fingers to do this step. The main part is just to make sure that you get all the ingredients combined until it forms a soft dough that you can roll out. So you see me here just drizzling some ice water into the food processor until that dough comes together. And then once it's done, I will stop and then lay some flour out on my board so I can roll this dough out and cut it out into tart shapes. So this dough tends to be a little bit sticky, which is fine. You just have to make sure that you flour your board and your rolling pin and the dough very thoroughly. Just roll it out until you can cut about 12 tarts from it. The recipe actually calls that this will make 8, but I think they were larger as originally stated. I'm actually using probably about a 4-inch tart cutter that I picked up from a kitchen store a few months ago, but I'll find one online and link it down below. So I just made sure that I floured my cutter, and I'm cutting those out and then just placing them in the bottom of a muffin tin, just sort of forming a tart shape. The muffin tin that I have is a Rachel Ray muffin tin, and it is very non-stick, so I don't have to put any grease on it. But if you have a muffin tin that is not non-stick, I would recommend spraying it with some cooking spray. So these will bake in a 425-degree oven for about 10 to 12 minutes until they are nice and brown and hold their shape. Then you can remove them and let them cool on a plate. So there were a few different variations to this, but I decided to use the cherry variation because I hadn't had cherry pie in a while and it just sounded really good. So the recipe calls to put some cherry pie filling in these tart shells and then top them with whipped cream. So of course there is a recipe for homemade cherry pie filling in the cookbook, but I was not going to make that today, and so I just used canned cherry pie filling and they turned out really good. I'm just topping them with some whipped cream. So here is a look at our completed lunch and dessert. All right, so here is our 1950s lunch. We have our cheese souffle, which is so fluffy and delicious. Honestly, I have never made or eaten a cheese souffle before today, but I'm glad I did. It wasn't that complicated, and it is so cheesy and delicious and fluffy. If you've never made one, I would totally encourage you to try it. It's like nothing I've ever tasted before. And then we have our chef's salad over here with our French dressing. It's nice and tangy. The dressing is really good and goes well with the crispy iceberg and all the veggies on top. And then we have our lemon butter broccoli and then also just some ice water. So that is what we are having for lunch today. I will show you our lunch dessert here in a minute. Here are the cherry cheese tarts. These look so delicious. I cannot wait for the kids to try them. I'll let you know at the end of the video what they thought. All right, so for our 1950s dinner tonight, I am making some meatballs and spaghetti, which turned out so delicious. To start this out, I'm going to make my marinara sauce. So I'm just taking 1 yellow onion and chopping this up into very fine dice, or as fine as I can. And then I will start to saute that in a Dutch oven with a little bit of either butter or olive oil or shortening in the bottom, whichever you want to use, before you add your tomato products. So to the onions, I'm going to add about 2.5 cups of tomatoes. I chose to use tomato sauce, which worked out really well. I'm also going to add about 2 cups of water and then some tomato paste. So this recipe calls for 2 6-ounce cans of tomato paste, which I went ahead and just got the regular Great Value brand, and it worked out just fine. And so once you get your tomato products in there, then you'll add the seasoning. So the seasoning in this recipe calls for some sugar, salt, pepper, bay leaf, and that is it. I honestly had to hold back from adding a bunch of Italian seasonings and spices to this, but I definitely wanted to stay true to the original recipe and make it as made. And definitely you guys try this out if you like spaghetti and meatballs. This is definitely a delicious recipe. No, it is not complicated. It is very simple, very budget friendly. It uses items that you will most likely already have in your pantry and in your kitchen, and I would recommend it. It turned out so delicious. So definitely in total, you want to simmer this sauce for around an hour. So once that gets started, I'm going to go ahead and start to make my meatballs. So for the meatballs for this recipe, you will need 1 pound of ground beef. And then I also added a cup of fine dry breadcrumbs, half a cup of grated Parmesan cheese, 1 sprig of parsley that I chopped up really finely, 1 clove of garlic minced, half a cup of milk, and 2 beaten eggs, and then salt and pepper to taste. So I went ahead and put all this into a bowl. I am going to use my new garlic press to squeeze my garlic into the mixture. I got this one on Amazon because it is all one piece. It's not multiple pieces of a garlic press that I have to wash in the dishwasher and worry about getting water caught in it. So I'll link that down below if you guys are interested. It's very inexpensive and I have been liking it. I would say the difference with this meatball recipe and others that I have made is that there is definitely a higher ratio of egg and breadcrumb and milk to beef than I am used to, which is fine if you're not counting carbs or anything. It does make a ton of meatballs, honestly, for 1 pound of ground beef. So this is like a really great way to stretch a pound of ground beef. I actually ended up freezing half of this sauce and using it for a later meal, and we're a family of 4. So the recipe does state that it serves 6, but I have 2 kids, and so obviously this would make 2 dinners for us. And so once I got all of the meat mixture mixed up, I'm going to use my scoop to form that into meatballs and then just put it on the plate before I brown those in the skillet. I do have a small cookie scoop that I like to use for meatballs. You can find these online and they're super helpful for both meatballs and cookie recipes. Once all the meatballs were formed, I went ahead and heated up a skillet with a little bit of olive oil, about over medium to medium high heat. And I'm just going to put these meatballs in the skillet with some tongs and let them brown on all sides until they are crispy. The goal here is not to cook the meatballs through, but rather to just brown them on the outside and get a nice crust, because we will end up taking these meatballs and putting them into the hot sauce to finish cooking the rest of the way. So this particular recipe actually only called for simmering the meatballs for 10 minutes in the sauce, but I actually wanted to simmer them for longer than that. So I probably let these meatballs simmer in the sauce for about 30 minutes. It's definitely your choice. I think it would be fine either way. But what I went ahead and did was started the sauce and then, made the meatballs right after. So as soon as they were done browning, I just went ahead and threw them into the sauce. So I think that the longer you can simmer the sauce and the meatballs together, the better. Obviously the sauce will absorb the flavor of the meat. I forgot to mention before that I'm using my Lodge Dutch oven to simmer the sauce and the meatballs. This is a really great tool for stovetop cooking, oven cooking, beef stew, whatever you want to make with it, because it has a super thick bottom. And so it is less likely to burn your food and more likely to keep it at a simmer without burning it. So the next thing that I'm going to work on is the dressing for the salad that goes with dinner. And so this is going to be a mixed greens salad with a garlic dressing. Okay, so the next thing that I am working on is obviously my garlic dressing for the salad that I am making. This is on page 339 of the cookbook if you have it and want to follow along. Otherwise, like I said before, I will be typing these recipes out in a Word document in the description box below. So for this dressing recipe, you'll need 1 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of white pepper, half a teaspoon of celery salt, 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne, and a 1/4 teaspoon of dry mustard, 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and 2 tablespoons of tomato juice. Also a dash of Tabasco sauce, along with 1 cup of oil and 1 clove of garlic minced, which I actually just minced with my garlic press. For the oil, I'm going to go ahead and just use vegetable oil because I didn't want to use up all the olive oil that I had in my house. And I am just using a jar with a lid to shake that up. You want to make sure that you let that sit in the refrigerator for about an hour before you pour it onto the salad to let the flavors combine. This meal also called for steamed green beans, so I'm just steaming up some fresh green beans in a skillet with some boiling water and some salt, and then I'll add some pepper and some butter after they are tender. So for the winter ambrosia salad, this is going to serve as our dessert as well as a side to dinner. So I am just using my knife to supreme this grapefruit, and then I will also cut and peel 2 navel oranges to add to the mixture as well. Make sure that you follow the recipe on this one. I'll have it typed out below. Also, it is on page 211 of the cookbook. I did actually forget to add the sugar to this recipe. I think because honestly, I don't even think about adding like really a sugar salad recipe. But I just want to say it did call for that, and I definitely forgot to add it. But even if you forget to add it, the flaked coconut and the maraschino cherries definitely gave this enough sweetness, so you may want to try it first without the sugar. Okay, so the next step is to add my flaked coconut. I am definitely not a huge fan of flaked coconut, but Kira is. She definitely loves it. So I added that, and then also the maraschino cherries and the pineapple. So I went ahead and just let this sit before dinner before I mixed it all up. Again, for dinner, we're obviously having spaghetti, so I am boiling some spaghetti noodles until those are tender. I'm just boiling them in some salted water. Here is another look at my meatballs and spaghetti that have been simmering. Totally delicious. Make sure that you fish out the bay leaves, obviously, before you serve that up. So here is a look at our completed plate. We have the spaghetti and meatballs that was suggested to serve with some Parmesan cheese on top, which I did. We have the mixed green salad with garlic dressing, some steamed green beans, and then the winter ambrosia salad. So that was our vintage 50s dinner this evening. Okay, so that completes our full day of vintage cooking. I had so much fun making these recipes. I wanted to just close out with letting you know what we thought of everything, because in case you want to try these recipes, I think that's an important part of it. And so again, this was the cookbook that I used, the Better Homes and Gardens new cookbook. I ordered this off of eBay. I think you can also get it on Amazon, so I'll link it down below, because I know last time I posted a video I did find it on Amazon, which was surprising. Back through the meals that we made now. I just want to provide full disclosure that I did not actually cook all of these meals in one day, because I'm not trying to be that kind of hero. But I did cook the breakfast and lunch one day, and then actually the dinner I made one night when I got home from work. So that was pretty good, I guess, that I was able to do that. With the ham omelet, that was actually really good. I thought that the flavors were very simple. The egg was very thin, and that's something that I like in an omelet. I'm kind of odd about eggs in that, like, sometimes I don't like eggs in like certain circumstances, and so I don't like my eggs in my omelets like super thick. And so that was good. The corn muffins were a little bit dry. I think that the recipe is good, but I think that the cookbook set to bake it for like 25 minutes. I only left it in for 15 and they were still overbaked. So I would bake them for less time next time. Connor did have some with grape jelly and thought they were really good. And then obviously the banana and orange cup and the coffee. So that was breakfast. For lunch, I made the cheese souffle. I have to say I was pretty dang proud of myself that I was able to successfully make a souffle. I've never made one before. How feasible it is to do a souffle for lunch? Probably not. I was actually texting my friend about it when I was making it, and she's like, yeah, I feel like back before a lot of women were in the workforce, there was more time to make souffles. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. But either way, I mean, it's not that it was hard. You know, it was just a little bit time consuming, but it was like so good and light. Like you have that egg flavor, but it's like very fluffy and light and cheesy. It was delicious. And then broccoli with the lemon butter sauce, self-explanatory. The chef salad bowl, well, the recipe said chef salad bowl, but I just served it on the side. That was good. I thought that the dressing was good. And then the cherry cheese tarts, actually, the kids loved those. That cream cheese dough was super simple and it's not sweet. All the sweetness in that comes from the cherry pie filling, and then obviously I put the whipped cream on top. So that's a recipe that I would actually make again. I think that you could make those little tart cups and put, you know, chocolate pudding in them or lemon filling or basically anything you want. Super cute. And then the dinner, we had the meatballs and spaghetti. I was honestly pretty, what's the word? Skeptical about that meat sauce. Not the meat sauce, the marinara sauce, because again, such simple ingredients, just basically onion, salt, pepper, sugar, a bay leaf, tomato paste, and tomato sauce and water. That was it. But it was so good. Like, do you guys remember, I don't know if anyone will remember this, but they probably still sell it, this like Kraft spaghetti dinner that came in like a box. And like, I feel like in there was like a can of concentrated like tomato sauce paste. Like that's what it kind of reminded me of. But the sauce itself was really good. Like I had to restrain myself and be like, okay, I'm not gonna dump a bunch of like Italian herbs in this. It's just gonna be simple. And it was delicious. The meatballs were really good too. Simmered it in the sauce. I felt like there was a cup of breadcrumbs in the meatballs. So not that low carb. But it's a good way to stretch a pound of ground beef. That pound of ground beef made a bunch of meatballs. I actually was able to freeze half of the meatballs in the sauce for another dinner. The mixed greens with the garlic dressing, that dressing was delicious. It was very garlicky without being too pungent, if that makes sense. But we love that. And then the winter ambrosia salad, I actually messed up making that recipe. Well, I'm gonna double check. And I didn't realize it until after we ate it, but I think I was supposed to add sugar to that. Oh yeah, you're supposed to put half a cup of sugar in that salad. I totally forgot and blew that off. Either way, it was good. My kids liked it. Connor's not really a huge fan of like flaked coconut. Kira really liked it because she likes coconut like that. So anyway, it messed that one up, but it was still good. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I really enjoy making these, and it's fun for me to go back and cook some of these like really classic American recipes and just see how they turn out. So I will see you in my next video. Bye.